Whatever the wheel lands on, I must build. Yes, a wheel will decide the fate of my next Minecraft house, and clearly luck has not been on my side with these combinations. If it decides to be a purple underwater brutalist house, I must build it. I mean, of course, that wasn't the build I actually had to do, so let's actually see what the house is going to look like. And first, we must decide what the terrain will be. What biome are we going to live in? Let's spin the wheel. I'm not looking forward to aquatic, because that means I'm gonna have to deal with a water. And at that point, I might have to make a new super flat world. Little tropical moment. Okay. I started by building out our coastline by using some world edit, and I still really do not know how to use world edit, so it took a while longer to use. And even then I had to fix it so it didn't look all blobby, which took far longer to do than if I just knew how to use world edit in the first place. That being said, I had to make a few decisions when it came to making the beach. Would it be a tropical sandy beach with palm trees and coconuts, or would it be a cliffside beach with gravel and stone? I chose tropical because I thought that's what the wheel would want. I decided to make the beach a rolling beach, so it didn't take too much time or effort for me to make, and the only thing that I really had to think about was making sure that it wasn't too steep. After I got done with the sandy part, the underwater part was begging for some love. So I used the blocks of a darker hue to mess up my world edit and have to undo a lot of my hard work. But then, ignoring the gravel and the beach for a second, I used the mud to make it look as if the water is getting deeper while sneaking in a cheeky gravel into sand transformation. Then I used a mixture of sand, packed mud, and stripped birch logs to make it appear as if it was gradually getting deeper rather than making the ground underneath the water actually deeper. I'm not sure exactly why I did that, but I think it looks good and that's what matters. After the water is in, I started to tackle the palm trees. Now, I literally have not built a custom tree in Minecraft in probably about 4 years, if not longer. And even then, I was bad at organics. So it took me an extremely long time, honestly, embarrassingly long amount of time to get the palm trees down. Luckily, I had one right outside my office window, so I could look at that for reference. But palm trees are hard, man! This second palm tree, I decided to split into 2, and I'm not sure exactly how realistic that is, but frankly, I do not care. I put the left trunk into a diagonal from the original trunk. And added some coconuts using some brown concrete powder. Who knows how big this build will be? Actually, we should probably figure that out. We should probably figure out what kind of build it is. I really don't want it to be a mega build, because if it is a mega build, this is going to be one really long stream, and it is my turn to make dinner tonight for my family. So for that in particular, I'm gonna make everything else, like, I'm gonna make it weighted. Okay, a big build. What kind of architecture we're going to have? There are a lot of them here. I like architecture. Okay. We got Tudor. I do know how to make Tudor. So now I want to know how many stories. This is a big Tudor style beach house, so I'm going to give a maximum of 5 stories. 5. Okay. What color? What color scheme are we going for? What color palette? An orange Tudor style house. Okay, let's go through all of the orange blocks that we have. Now that we know that we are going to have the atrocious combination of an orange 5-story Tudor style beach house, I had to at least attempt to make it look somewhat decent. In order to do that, we got to start with a wool wireframe to see what each part of the house is going to look like. To add some whimsy, we're going to have the front door be a tower entrance. So I added a small purple circle there to start on that shape and then put the actual L-shaped structure behind it and started adding where the different floors are going to be. In order to make this house a 5-story house, I decided the best bet would be to have the first 2 stories be within the foundation of the rest of the home. Then I used dark blue wool to mark out the roof on the left side of the house. The 3rd floor on that side will have vaulted ceilings and the 4th and 5th floors will come on the other side. A big factor of Tudor style houses is called jetty construction. It's where the upper floors are jetted out to overhang the bottom floor. It's also why you literally never see a Tudor style building be more than 3 stories tall. It gets too top heavy if it's taken too high, so quite literally I am rewriting history by making a 5-story Tudor style house. That's also why the first 2 floors are in the foundation. The 4th and 5th floors are within the tall roof on the right part of the home. I also added 2 dormers to the roof just to add some pizzazz. Now we start on the actual building. I thought it would be best to make the foundation out of a more muted and kind of red-toned block, and what better block to use for a base than granite? Then the painting began. We used some normal terracotta for the shadows on the bottom and some copper near the top for highlight. Also, the better block to use for the base is actually brick, not granite. Figured that one out. We put in some windows and used the dark oak slabs to separate the floors, and initially that was temporary, but it did start to grow on me, so it became a permanent feature. For more detailing, I used fences on the windows and started using fence gates and stairs as supports for the slab separators. While I detail the side and back of this part of the build, let's get into the history of this architectural style. Tudor style buildings originated from England and Wales, and as we know, it doesn't translate into Minecraft very well. Yeah! I wanted to do the painting technique, but I made it a bit too noisy. I didn't really know where to stop and just kind of kept going, and now it's a bit more of a randomized texturing than shadows and highlights. Which isn't bad, it just wasn't the style I was going for. The next step in the process was to make a second block palette. This one is going to be for the entry tower. I decided to start by making it out of terracotta, which was then proven to be a horrible, awful, terrible idea, since I couldn't change the blocks with World Edit after that, because I used the terracotta on every other part of the build so far. So I couldn't just change those blocks without changing all of the other terracotta blocks. Or maybe I could, I'm just bad at World Edit. I don't know. To make sure I got all of the colors right, I started color blocking the build with the middlemost block that I would be using. And since I haven't used a lot of resin in any build ever, I thought that would be a good starting point for the 3rd floor. Then I did some small details and fixed some smaller bits on the build before moving into the shading in the corner between the tower and the shorter part of the house. I ended up not liking the terracotta on the entrance. It just didn't have enough contrast from the rest of the build, and even though it is supposed to be an orange build, I decided to use a white block palette for this tower just to make it stand out a little bit more. I started by turning the tower into a white terracotta manually. I just like that it's a bit more muted and had a warm tone underneath, which allowed it to blend better into the rest of the base considering the orange. For the last bit of color blocking, we gotta put the top of the house on. And by that I mean the roof. The roof of Tudor style houses are usually pretty pointy, but not like spiky Gothic, more like steeper than a ski slope. I mapped it out by actually building out the walls and not the actual roof, and I was a bit dumbhead, so I didn't really use the wireframe as I intended for the roof, like at all, and instead I just used it to find the middle block. So I guess you'll see what happens with that soon. I started with putting in the dormers and then had to fiddle around with that for about 15 minutes as I tried to attach it to the non-existent roof. So I partially made the main roof instead of actually focusing on the whole roof, because that makes sense. In order to attach the dormer roof to the partial roof, I had to perform some dark voodoo magic in order for it to actually connect. And at this point, I gotta find another word for roof. It's getting ridiculous. I thought dark oak would be a good material for this since we have been using it as an unofficial accent color for the entire build. And as you can see, here's where everything started to go horribly wrong. I made the roof so insanely tall. Not that I realized that while I was building, so I just started on the other side of the build with the dormers, completely oblivious to the demented creature that I'm creating. I copied the dormers on the other side and made it completely symmetrical so I didn't have to do any thinking with my brain, and then made the roof and realized all of my mistakes. It really is too tall. It's so tall. And I know Tudor style is synonymous with a pointy roof, but not necessarily a roof that would touch build limit. Like this one, it's not actually touching build limit, but it really looks like it is. The roof is probably the exact same height as the entirety of the rest of the house, but I digress. I filled in the gaps and started working on the 4th and 5th floor of the building. And by that, I mean I put in the walls and used dark oak slabs to separate everything once again. And looking back at it, I think I liked using the dark oak slabs because it was similar to the support beams that a lot of Tudor style houses have in the top part of their buildings. But that didn't actually come into mind when I was actually building it. I made the same mistake on the left side of the building when it came to making the roof too tall, but it kind of worked out considering I had to balance the nightmare that I created on the right side, and this one actually still looks proportional somehow. The next step was to extend the small roof to continue past the tower just a little bit to make sure that the build looked a little more balanced and is a bit more filled out. Then putting the resin in the walls once more. Now finally moving on to the last roof, the tower. I haven't really built circle roofs very often, so I took some inspiration from a witch's hat and crafted a masterpiece. Although, since the witch's hat blended into the dark oak behind it, I thought I would change the roof to be mud bricks for a bit more contrast. And then it was just on to some texturing. I did the fences for windows on this side as well, and this time added some shutters using some spruce trapdoors, then detailed the beam in the same style as the others. I thought it would be fun to add some flower boxes on the second floor, you know, for the whimsy, and unfortunately, I pressed pause on my recording to eat some dinner and completely forgot to unpause it when I was doing all of the texturing on the fancy tower. But I used shelves and stuff for depth and made the white terracotta more of the shadows rather than the main color since it was kind of dark. Then started the texturing on the orange part of the right side of the build. This block palette was kind of weird, not gonna lie. I used red sand and orange concrete powder, so I had to deal with gravity, which was annoying to say the least. After that, I moved on to the dormers, where I decided the direction of the sun for the very first time in the build, and this should have been chosen at the beginning, but whatever, it's fine. Then it was time to tackle the blending on the 3rd floor. I started with the shadows next to the tower and under the roof, then worked slowly to blending it into the highlights where I decided the sun would beam down on the house. Moving on to the 5th floor, I put in one window, gave it some depth, and promptly moved on to the next bit of the house. On the story right under that, shadows were added under the support beam and the gable of the roof. Then more texturing occurred. Actually, there's about 5 more minutes of texturing time lapses, which I literally just do the exact same thing I've been doing. So let's just skip all that and move on to making the path. In order to make a beach path, I used a mixture of stripped wood, path blocks, and bamboo planks, and just did a bit of a footpath from the beach. So we could protect the front door from the sun, we put down a brown awning using carpets and spruce fences. There was a lot of empty space on the beach in front of our atrocity, which I'm actually kind of proud of. So I decided to add some cacti into the picture. It doesn't make a ton of sense that there's cacti on the beach, but I decided to go off. Now, I personally do not love this house, but I am still proud of it. The wheel allowed me to explore new environments such as building on the beach, and allowed me to learn so many new things such as custom tree building and the underwater shading. I have never really built in orange before other than the last video, which you can see that build behind me. And this has made me realize that I really don't love the orange blocks in this game. I absolutely love the tower and the detailing that I did around this build, even if this is what my house reminds people of. But thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you did, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and please let me know down in the comments below if you would like for this to become a series, and I will see you all next time.